Hello everyone, Ben here, and welcome to a Senate election prediction, or review, or state analysis. I don't know, because, yeah, I'm just going to call it a prediction, though you're going to get a very non-answer from me at the end of the video on how I think this state's going to go. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to take this, because from my digging up in the data, it's a very interesting state. Over the long term, aka since 1982, whenever I do these, I'm reviewing it since the year 1982 for a long-term trend, and of course I'll also look at a short-term trend. While I'm not going to entirely discount incumbent victories, I'm also not gonna, heavily factor them in, because it seems Ohio really likes incumbents. In 1982, they had an incumbent running, and he won. He was a Democrat, and he won 4 points more than the national Democrat did. So it's shifted from D+4, this seat, to R+2, even though a Democrat won in the last midterm. Or, sorry, not the last midterm, the last election that was held. He won, and that was Sherrod Brown, and of course he was an incumbent in 2012. He won 50 to 44 over the Republican. And I forget who it was. In 2012, the state re-elected Senator Rob Portman, 58 to 37, or Republican plus 16, and that's a 21% margin. Yeah, yeah. And of course, like I said, he was an incumbent, so that kind of matters a little bit. Now, in 2012, which was also a presidential election year, which I think that really makes it easy to compare the 2 years, the incumbent only won by 6 points, and the state was more Republican than the nation as a whole when it came to the Senate elections. I've also noticed something. This class of Senate seats seems to favor the Democrats, historically speaking, nationally in terms of the popular vote. But at the state level, not so much until you go back into the 80s when, somehow Democrats were winning everything in sight. For example, you had the Sherrod Brown being the incumbent in 2006, when he won the state 3 points more than the national Democrat at 56 to 43. 2000, he was also an incumbent, and oh, sorry, he was not an incumbent. A Republican was the incumbent, and he won by 13 points more than the Republicans across the rest of the nation. And the Democrat really underperformed. 1994 was the last time this seat was in an open election where no incumbent was running, and that was won by the Republican. About 5 points more than the rest of the nation voted for the Republican. And the Republicans got 49% of the national vote in 1994 for this class of seats. Then, of course, Democrats by 5 and Democrats by 4, both for an incumbent senator. So, honestly, this is a state that should favor the Republicans, especially in a midterm year, and in a year where the economy in the state should be performing fairly well. But it's also a year where the Democrats should have the advantage because the Democrats aren't the party of the presidency. They should also have, and in this case, Sherrod Brown should have an advantage because he is the incumbent. That's not really a secret, I guess. So, what are we going to look at? Well, or how are we going to predict this state? Well, I don't know. It's a swing state. That should not be lost upon us. It is also a state that seems to really like its incumbents. But it's voted more Republican than the nation as a whole in half of the elections since 1982, and Democrat in the same way, at least for this class of seats. And it's just a very weird state. And like I said, it tends to vote for the incumbents, and then I haven't checked Rob Portman's seat, but it seems when there's an open seat, it will flip parties. Now, there was one rare instance, that was the 2006 elections, where Sherrod Brown unseated the incumbent. But I think that had to do with just Bush being extremely unpopular. And here's the thing, I don't think Bush is... Actually, I don't remember what Bush's popularity was compared in 2006 compared to Trump's, but if I remember correctly, it was less. Yeah, Bush was less popular in 2006 than Trump was now. And by the way, I'm going to pull up 538 to show you where I am getting Trump approval numbers. So I go here to the polls of likely or registered voters. And we see that Trump is at about a 40% approval rating. And if we look at George W. Bush, over 4 years, actually let's look over 8 years. So this is 2001, 2002, 2003, 4, 5, 2006. Yeah, Bush had a lower approval rating. Obama only was doing 5 points better than where Trump is now. Now, Clinton was popular throughout. H.W. Bush never got that rate. Trump is not doing too far behind Reagan. Carter was extremely unpopular. (2001), 2002, 3, 4, 5, 2006. So that would be in year 6. Nixon resigned before he could reach that same point. Now, if we look at the current point, yeah, Trump is doing worse than any president except for Truman, and he's almost right at Ford. But if we look at, he's not the least popular modern president ever at any point. Carter had a random boost in popularity at some point. But Carter spent a decent amount of his presidency hovering around Trump numbers. Reagan surprisingly had points where he hovered around that. Most of his presidency was spent above water. H.W. Bush finished underwater. Obama really shows how polarized we've gotten. Yeah. W had a random period where I wonder if you guys can guess what caused that bump. But yeah, 538 takes all the polls. They look at, only this type of stuff. And yes, they do adjust it. Most of these adjustments bump Trump down or both of these numbers down. So yeah, Trump is not as unpopular as many people would think. Okay, and there's their methodology. I know I shouldn't be, doing this, but I'll look at that later. Anyway, so I'll come back to this in a bit. I'm going to go to the Senate interactive map. Does it still have where I am? Yes. Okay, so how am I going to rate Ohio? That's the big question, is how am I going to rate Ohio? And truth be told, I'm going to rate this as leans Democrat. I'm going to say it's going to vote for Sherrod Brown, but it's going to be closer than the national election. Also, don't complain when the Republicans hold a majority, because I do expect them to hold their Senate majority in 2018. Don't, despite them only getting about 40% to 43-ish% of the Senate seats, and here's why. Washington is up for election. California is up for election, and the Democrats are going to get 100% of the vote in California. Why? Because they have a weird system where for every office but the president, they have two-party primaries where it's one big primary, and Democrats are going to get, they're going to get the top, and of course the top two candidates have an election on the same day as everybody else's election. So Democrats are going to get 100% of the votes in California. So that's going to skew the results. New York is going to 100% vote for the Democrat. New Jersey, same thing, and by large margins, I suspect. Massachusetts as well, and these are some pretty large states. Now, yes, Texas is going to help offset that, and so is Tennessee, but the Republicans are going to be, losing so many votes, potential votes from California, Virginia, Washington. They're going to, lose so big in those areas that it's not feasible for them to be able to mount a comeback, even if they somehow won every vote in Texas. In Tennessee and Missouri, those are the only two states above 10 electoral votes that the that are, and I'm using electoral votes here to just kind of indicate how large the population is. Not entirely serious, but you get what I mean, is these states are the only ones that are decently large enough to try and offset New York and California. It shouldn't be a surprise when the Republicans flip a seat or two from this, or hold a seat or two, or maintain their majority despite being absolutely slaughtered in the national Senate vote. It's just because of where the Senate vote is. It's just like there's one class of seats where the Democrats are going to be expected to get slaughtered in the national vote, but hold their ground other than that simply because of where the Senate seats are. Anyway, but yeah, I'm going to rank Ohio as leaning Democrat, but expect Sherrod Brown to win it, but not as much as, say, the National Democrat would. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.